Hello, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable discussion. Before we get started, let me remind you that we are covered by the BIPCOT no government license, which allows for the use and reuse of this podcast by anyone and everyone except for governments and the bludgies thereof. You can learn more about that at bipcot.org. That is BIPCOT.org. We're also protected by Brandenburg v. Ohio 1969, which ruled that the government cannot punish inflammatory speech unless that speech is, quote, directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. So everything we say here on this podcast is hypothetical. This is episode 95, I think. Maybe. Is what I wrote down.
Probably.
Yeah, 95. Yeah,
sounds right.
I can see my notepad. This is episode 95. And I don't have anything following that because, well, I'm not professional. We're not professional. Welcome to the shit show.
That's why we're in Hawaiian garb.
That's right.
What do you got? You both got Hawaiian garb, and you got your Boogaloo patch.
Yes, yes. I have the Boogaloo shark patch that we are giving away on Inked Anarchist Hootenanny Roundup. And fun fact about that, it turns out that Poppin's patches in all of the patch stores on Etsy had any patch that had a Boogaloo tag on it taken down off of the store.
Really?
Yep. They took down all of the patches that are Boogaloo oriented. Absolutely all of them. So you can't even buy this patch right now. So if you want it, you got to enter that, and you can go to the page for entry details for that.
I need to tell him to get on Agris hosting.
Yeah, I told him that he's got to make his own page, and we'll promote it and stuff. But he's working on it. But did we actually have anybody that actually entered the giveaway?
Nobody shared the post from last week. Zero.
Again, a second time. I'm trying to give something away.
Let's see. What was on the MP3 player? On the MP3, we got. Let's check Anchor right now. We got last week. We got 70 plays on that episode last week. Nobody shared the Facebook post.
So nobody followed the instructions for a second time.
For the second time.
I want to give someone something for free, and they don't want it.
It's a cool, badass looking Plague Doctor coronavirus patch.
It is a cool patch, man. Work hard, plague hard. We got toilet paper and Corona in his hands. It is amazing.
And nobody wants it.
And apparently nobody wants it. I got one for myself. I don't need another one. You guys, I want to give it to you, and you don't apparently want it. They actually, fun fact, they also took down his Muy Caliente one. His flamethrower one that we gave one away on Inked Anarchist. They took that one down too.
Those freaking bastards! And of all things, like we're gonna get into that later, but the propaganda surrounding the Boogaloo thing is just astronomically retarded.
It's absurd.
Oh, and we're absolutely going to get demonetized for me using the word retarded.
Oh, yeah.
YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
I don't fucking care. I can suck my dick.
Yeah, because YouTube is retarded also.
Yeah. I don't care, man. It's whatever.
So, Andrew, I guess that puts a hold on our little collaborative effort then, huh?
Yeah, for now. We co-designed a patch with him, and when it comes out, it's going to be amazing. It is a Mandalorian helmet in Hawaiian pattern.
Nice.
With a Boogalorian "This is the way" on it, and it's going to be fantastic. But it's going to have to be on hold because he can't sell it right now.
I don't want one of those.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to want one of those really badly.
He'll have to convert all of his production over to that patch.
Well, as it is, he pretty much had to for the shark one, because once we debuted it on this show and then on the site and stuff, he just kept selling out. He couldn't make them fast enough. So
That's good.
I talked to speaking of Boogaloo and selling things, talked to Shane Shane Radliff, Liberty Under Attack Publications, and he said that people are buying Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage hand over fist.
Nice.
Like
I really got to get myself a copy.
The sales are like just up. Like he sold 12 of them in one day, which was. I've been pushing it. I've been pushing it.
I was gonna say it doesn't. I haven't seen my notification that mine's shipped yet. So
this one right there. It's on Amazon. Look it up, but yeah. I don't know. Let's just get into it then.
Yeah.
That means I gotta pick up my phone and find the. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm truly having a temporary vacation here. I got the Hawaiian shirt. I got some red stripe going on here for beer. We got the cigar. I'm just on vacation, man. So,
Red stripe, man.
I decided to go with the Hillsboro Badger Sweat tonight.
I got a shaker bottle of water. Oh. I don't know. Since we're talking Boogaloo, mention Boogaloo. Let's just get into that with our buddy Marco Rubio.
Oh God.
This article is out of the Second Amendment Daily News. It says Marco Rubio says Boogaloo groups are destroying cities alongside Antifa. See, blah 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 blah. Okay, and then Rubio says Rubio tries to play to the crowd. It says while the hard left is squealing at being called out, Florida Senator Marco Rubio saw an opportunity to hopefully pander to the middle ground. After all, without a spine, the middle ground has got to. After all, without a spine, the middle ground is all he has to work with. Rubio took to Twitter to paint violence as equally that of Antifa and Boogaloo groups. Marco says Marxo Rubio pretends that the right is behind the violence in these cities, while we have no doubt that there are outside agitators. It's laughable to think it's the right. It says, since many of the folks commenting on the story have never heard of Boogaloo groups, he felt the need to explain what they were. He says, quote, they may not be idealized. He's such a fucking moron. Okay. Quote, they may not be ideologically compatible, but share a hatred of government and police and are taking advantage of the protests. Rubio said. Red Flag Rubio, who is acting chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, is saying that without any evidence to back up his statements.
Taking advantage. Wait, so anti-government.
Yeah, that's
anti-government elements are taking advantage of the
said,
anti-government protests.
Yeah, they may not be ideologically compatible, but share a hatred of government and police and are taking advantage of the protests. Yeah.
All of us are just at a loss of words here. It's just like, what?
Well, and you know what? And he's even wrong with it not being ideologically compatible, ironically, because there are plenty of Boog Boys. I mean, Ryan Teeter, right? Our boy Ryan got interviewed by CNN about the Boog, which was fantastic. Like, his interview was great. Because I mean, you want to talk about destroying all of the leftist media's preconceived notions of the Boogaloo thing. The guy is a left. He describes himself as a left anarchist. He's definitely left leaning, but he's a member of the LGBT community. He's a hardcore firearms enthusiast and Boog Boi. He just destroys them. They're like, well, but he's like, no, where are you people getting this crap?
You couldn't have asked for a better person for them to have interviewed for that.
Oh yeah, and it started because he got photographed at that protest, and some talking head, blue check mark on Twitter, tried to pretend that like he was he was like a hyper alt-right like white supremacist, and like everyone who knew him immediately like replied to the tweet and is like, he's like a left-leaning bisexual guy, right? Like like you are aware of that.
That's what there was a conversation about this same sort of thing on Twitter, and people were calling Eric July a Nazi.
They are aware that
he's black, right?
Right.
and then that got pointed out, and then it became not Nazi sympathizer.
Like, he's a black dude. I don't. For the love of God, I mean, like the problem is that, especially with these protests and things, and the fact that Boog Boys have gone out there and they've started protecting businesses and protesters alike, and they're trying to make sure that everything goes the direction, all the anger and frustration and thing is all aimed the way it should be. They're grasping at straws every which way to try and justify why they're bad, why they must be bad, because how dare you carry firearms? Well, this whole thing is about how the police don't protect people and they can't be trusted and they're dangerous, and obviously now suddenly firearms are an important thing and people are starting to buy them in droves who never bought them before. And hilariously,
like 2 million first-time buyers in the last 2 months.
It's huge. Guns are flying off the shelves. Most of my friends that run shops, they're like,
"Oh, can't keep anything in stock." No.
I was actually at our favorite shop there, Andrew, Village Gunsmith, and they post every new item that they sell on Facebook, or even all the used inventory that comes in. I walked in 10 minutes after they posted a new item, and it was already gone.
Yeah, my local shop here has nothing but the Skies, the SCCY, which are terrible
absolute garbage.
And then they have like the $1,800 Dan Wessons, and then everything in between that is gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen guys talk about the fact that all they really have left is like 38 and 380. Like they have 38 like snub-nosed revolvers because only FUDs and FUD sympathizers buy those because they're outdated, useless piles of trash. And no, I don't care what your opinion is. You're wrong if you disagree with that.
They don't jam.
Yeah, they don't jam. First of all, I have seen revolvers jam. Yes, they can.
They do.
And when they go far worse than a semi-auto. A semi-auto, I can pull it apart real quick and fix even the worst to remediate jams. A revolver decides it's going to break a part that rotates or indexes that cylinder, and that's it, man. It's garbage. Chuck it.
They don't jam people are also the same ones that pocket carry.
Right.
Yep. And
gets lint all up in the action.
Yeah.
And causes it to jam.
Yeah, they pocket carry, and they pocket carry with a single action with the hammer forward, and or they'll pocket carry a gun like a semi-auto without a round in the pipe because they're idiots. Like,
wasn't it just like a month or so ago? There was an article of a guy. He and his son both died during a shootout because Dad carried with an empty chamber.
Carried on an empty chamber, and he got shot before he had a chance to rack it.
Yep.
Yep, exactly.
Like I say, empty chamber carriers are the flat earthers of the gun community.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like these gun shops are talking about how all they have left is the 38s and the 380s because everybody pretty much is smart enough not to go anywhere near them. And like, oh, do I want wimpy and outdated or wimpy, outdated, and poorly built? Like, let's choose here. So everyone goes nowhere near them. So they just have those. So when people come in, they're like, we got trash.
Yeah,
let me introduce you to an 80% Glock loader.
Right, but you can't even hardly find parts for those.
Yeah, that all got snapped up too.
Yeah, I mean, my sister-in-law recently acquired was that the Shield Easy in 380,
Oh, Jesus.
right? I was like, they make those in 9mm.
Yeah.
She goes, yeah, but this just made more sense. It's like, why? It's the same. 9mm would be the same caliber as your husband's SIG that he has. So why would you want to change that?
Well, not only that, but I mean, if you look at the ballistics, 380 is just one. I mean, it's one step above 32 ACP.
What was it? What was that? There's some school did a shooting experiment. God damn, I hate to say it, but it might have been Jaeger. James Jaeger did it, where they had like a 380 and they had a ballistic dummy and like a really thick, heavy Carhartt winter jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't go through.
And the 380 hollow points didn't penetrate the jacket.
Yep. I believe it.
I believe it.
They're garbage. It's absolute garbage.
Yeah. It might not have been Jaeger. It might have been somewhere up north, but yeah. It was,
the fire hose, like you can get the fire hose work coats and
From
stuff
Duluth.
that are made out of that. Yeah, that heavy duty nylon.
Yep.
And it won't go through that. It'll stop on it. Shit, are you kidding me? A 45 may or may not go through that if it's thick enough. So it's just like I'm gonna go with 9mm because I have the same terminal ballistics as 45 and 40 virtually, but I also get hydraulic shock, and I have bigger ammo capacity, and I get less recoil than a 45.
So where's the downside?
Yeah, I'm looking for a reason to pick.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to suppress 45 is useless too. And I know there's lots of FUDs right now going, I'm going to type up angry comments, but I don't care. You're wrong.
That's fine. Just share the post.
Yeah, just share the post so I can give you a patch. I don't care if I think that you're dumb. I'll still give you the patch.
Please comment. Troll lol all day long if you want. It helps our reach.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Circling back around to the Marx O. Rubio, the article actually called him Marx.
I saw that. That's great.
Marx O. Rubio. He's not the first one to say it. Calling out the right, the Boogaloo boys, and how they're far right and racist and all this other BS, which we've discussed before. There's a couple of USA Today articles and some other local papers that were talking about it. We got a couple positive ones that we're going to talk about later. I forgot where my point was going, but okay, there it is. The propagandization of the right, while they are literally the media, everyone right now is submitting to the left, to the cancel culture, while demonizing the right, the Boogaloo boys, the armed people protecting their neighborhoods and all this good stuff. Where do you think that's going?
Oh, and it's obviously aimed to disarm, as an excuse to disarm everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can say, oh well, clearly the only people who are taking up arms at this point.
How can they disarm people when they're disbanding the police?
Right?
Isn't that an interesting question?
Like Minneapolis, right? They 9 of the 13 people. Why do they have fucking city council with 13 members? But 9 of the 13 members of the city council have said that they're going to defund or
disband.
Completely
disband. They've already already defunded it. They're going to disband the entire police department and are, quote, going to choose a novel approach to safe communities.
Which
I guarantee you that has nothing to do with armed citizens.
Yeah. Well,
it is.
Because it's Minneapolis. They don't want armed citizens patrolling their streets.
What was it?
Even though they have that right now.
Well, we were talking about it before you got on, but like all 13 members of the city council, there's like 1 member of the Green Party, and the other 12 are like Democratic Farmer Labor Party.
Yeah, the other 12 are Democrats.
Socialists.
Yeah.
Like blatant socialists.
Right.
13 socialists, one's part of the Green Party, which is
probably also a socialist.
Well, yeah, I mean, green on the outside, red on the inside. But yeah.
They're watermelons.
So defund the police. I dare you. Have like 429,000 people. Defund and disband the police department, please. I dare.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's gonna get interesting, and and the thing is it's not like I oppose the idea of getting rid of police, but the problem is that what they want to do is disarm everybody, leave them all defenseless, and also get rid of the police because they're like, oh, but the police are dangerous. And it's this weird cognitive dissonance where, like, simultaneously they understand that the police are dangerous, can't be trusted, and then also go, but you have those dangerous psychopaths to protect you. You don't need a gun.
Right.
And there's the same people saying the police are bad, guns are bad, you shouldn't have guns. And then the flip side, there's like BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, like they're talking about having peace officers among the Black Lives Matter, right? Very exactly reminiscent of the Black Rights Movement here in California in the 1960s, which led to Ronald Reagan instituting gun control here in California because he was scared of black communities policing their own community.
Well, yeah, the Black Panthers, I mean, did a lot of bad things, but they also, that was one of the things that they did.
Absolutely.
They did a lot of community policing and taking care of the community and trying to protect the minority communities from government overreach and overstep and oppression.
Literally protecting themselves from the police.
Well, yeah, Tupac Shakur's mom, Afeni, was heavily involved in doing exactly that when he was a little kid. That's exactly what Afeni did. I mean, when Tupac first got shot, that it was those guys who protected him in the hospital because the cops wouldn't post any guards.
Yeah, and that happened here in California. There's a really, really famous photo of the Black Panthers standing on the steps of the Capitol building. Rifles, pistols hanging on them, fist in the air. It's a beautiful photograph. But that's what led to, drumroll please, Governor Ronald Reagan instituting gun control in California.
Yeah, anyone who thinks that gun control isn't racist and specifically designed to disarm the black populace historically is very, very ill-informed. That is exactly why gun control exists. The beginnings of gun control were in the post-Civil War, the Reconstruction United States, especially in the South, aimed at keeping newly freed slaves from being able to arm themselves.
Yeah.
So it's always been racist. It's always been about being racist, being pro-gun control. And you think about it right now, look at where they're planning on disbanding police departments. If you also disarm those communities, who's the most at risk here?
Yeah, it's minority-controlled, minority and Democrat-controlled areas.
They're going to be completely vulnerable to any criminal element that wants to do anything to them. They won't have the ability to do jack shit in response. Because they won't have a police department, they won't have arms.
The criminals aren't the one going to turn their guns in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell no. And not only that, but I mean, you've got so many criminals, in the state, the city governments and whatnot themselves. But you look at those minority communities, they're going to be overrun. I mean, they've already got the gangs. They're not going to turn in their stuff because criminals don't care about the laws in the first place, like you said. And you're going to have gangs running the cities from the ground, and the city government's going to go, what do we do? State, we need the National Guard to help clean this up. Well, no. I mean, that's what they're doing now with the protesters and everything too, but that's neither here nor there.
If you really wanted to try a novel and guaranteed successful approach to community policing, you would just arm everybody and you would allow communities to designate or hire certain people to act within the community as security, who would then be financially incentivized to actually take care of people, to actually worry about protecting people. Because don't forget, the police are under absolutely no obligation to protect you, period. And that has been reaffirmed by the Supreme Court 3 times at least.
Yes, we have an article linked in the description about that very thing in reference to what is happening in Minneapolis. And it's an article from Mises, which we're familiar with. I mean, I'm a big fan, but it says Minneapolis riots are a reminder that police don't protect you or your property.
Yep.
This has been reaffirmed again and again and again and again. And most recently, this was affirmed in regards to the Coward County Sheriff's deputy in Florida that hid behind his vehicle while kids were getting shot up at Parkland or something Stoneman High School.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Parkland High School shooting.
You know, what's funny about that one and it being affirmed there is that guy was actually an SRO.
Yeah, he was a school resource officer, and it was his job to, according to his job description as laid out,
contract that the school board had, he was in fact supposed to protect.
Exactly.
And what's interesting about that is Warren v. DC said that unless a pre-existing arrangement between the police and the people exist, that the police are under no obligation to protect you. But then this court hearing found that even if that prearranged thing exists, it still doesn't actually exist.
Yep.
Yeah, can you imagine any other industry where you can't fire someone for not doing their job?
Well, I mean, those exist. There's the auto industry and
okay, all right, yeah.
But unions, same reason. Unions.
Yeah, points to that guy in the Hawaiian shirt. But, yeah, we don't need to get into that article now, but yeah, it's been affirmed like 12 or 13 times,
something like that.
Yeah, over and over and over again by various courts, at least 3 times by the Supreme Court of the United States that I know of. Mm-hmm. With the most recent one being versus Broward County, and that was the parents of students who were killed and injured in the shooting having sued.
Oh yeah, they were suing the cop for failure to protect their children. Right. He appealed, and then it went up the chain, and the Supreme Court ruled that no duty to protect.
Yep, regardless of the contract.
Yeah, an actual physical contract that specifically says it is your duty to protect. Still, because he's a cop, he is not actually bound by that contract.
Yep. I actually had that conversation with someone on Instagram yesterday, and like they had never heard of this before, and it absolutely blew their mind that police have no obligation to protect.
Oh yeah,
I had these conversations at least 3 times a day with people.
Yeah, like they were genuinely shocked and appalled.
Oh yeah. You'll get that a lot, and you'll get that a lot when you bring it up to the thin blue line people, where you're like, well, you do know that they're under actually no obligation to protect you whatsoever. They can literally, and they have, in the case of that one serial murderer in New York City on the subway, where they were stabbing that guy, and those like 3 New York Metro PD guys just stood there and watched him stab that dude until the dude subdued his would-be murderer himself, and then they arrested the guy.
Right.
They just stood there and watched until the guy actually got him subdued himself without their help. And he couldn't sue because they're under no obligation to protect you.
Yeah, the Warren versus DC That is 1981. It's 3 women were being held hostage by 2 men. The women twice managed to phone police and ask for help. The police never came. The 3 women were beaten, robbed, and raped for 14 hours. The Supreme Court ruled that the police had no obligation to protect them.
Yep, didn't actually have any obligation to respond to a call of, I'm being held hostage and raped. Come
quote,
save me.
Yeah, quote, this is from the court, quote, fundamental principle of American law is that a government and its agents are under no general duty to provide public services such as police protection to any individual citizen. I'll read that one more time. Fundamental principle of American law is that a government and its agents are under no general duty to provide public services such as police protection to any individual citizen.
That includes, and because it's any, that includes fire, that includes anything, any emergency response, any of it. They have no actual obligation to give you any protection from anything at all, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And, you hear so often about people who get restraining orders and whatnot. And amongst gun people, you always hear, teach your daughters how to shoot because a restraining order is just a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's
that's town of Castle Rock versus
Castle Rock,
Gonzalez, where they ruled 7-2 that a town and its department couldn't be sued for failing to enforce a restraining order, which is supposed to keep somebody away from you, which led to the murder of a woman's 3 children by her estranged husband.
Yeah, an actual court order. So this is an order by the state, for the state, to punish somebody for violating it, and they failed to do that. And the court's response was, meh, oh well.
Right.
And then you still have people that'll be like, well, but without the police, who's going to protect you?
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so Gonzalez,
who's going to protect me?
Gonzalez versus Castle Rock is this was decided 2005.
Yep.
And so Gonzalez requested a restraining order against her estranged husband. State trial court issued the order, which prohibited the husband from seeing Gonzalez or the 3 daughters, except during prearranged visits. A month later, Gonzalez's husband abducted the 3 children. Gonzalez reportedly urged the police to search for and arrest her husband. The police told her to wait until later that evening and see if her husband brought the children back. During the night, Gonzalez's husband murdered all 3 children and then opened fire inside a police station where police returned fire and killed him. Gonzalez brought a complaint in federal district court alleging that Castle Rock police had violated her rights under due process clause of the Constitution by willing or neglectingly refusing to enforce the restraining order. Yeah. Ruled that yeah.
Well, and you see that
7-2 decision. Court ruled that Gonzalez had no constitutionality protected property interest in the enforcement of the restraining order and therefore could not claim that the police had violated her right in due process.
Well, you know what's ridiculous is I'll bring that up to some of these thin blue liners and they will go, well, I don't believe that. But I literally just showed you the Supreme Court decisions. Like, you can read them for yourself. Like, here, I'll even give you the links. And they're like, well, I don't believe that that's what that says. Okay, well, read it and tell me. Well, no, I'm not going to read it. I just don't believe it.
On that same line, I actually had a conversation one time with a cop. So I went through the Sparta Police Department's Citizens Academy a couple of years back. And the whole reason I did it was just to learn more about them, because Minecraft is a real thing, if you know what I mean. I was talking to one of them and I was like, so what's your take on the fact that you don't have any duty to protect the public? He goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I pulled next class, I brought a printout of the Warren v. District of Columbia. He goes, I've been doing my job wrong all this time.
Yeah, that's his reaction instead of, that's crap, I'm not going to listen to that. Oh, gee, you mean this could be so much easier?
Right.
Well, and it's funny. What's funny about that is then all these people, because remember the Minneapolis police when they were going to, when now there's talk of forcing police to carry liability insurance for cases where they get sued for excessive use of force and everything else, where instead of the taxpayers paying, they have to. And there's all these cops now on Twitter and things who are saying, well, then we're just not going to respond to effectively, to sum them up, victimless crimes anymore, or minor crimes that the community can handle themselves. And he's like, well, we're not going to do that. And all these people were appalled. And I just pointed out immediately, well, they've never been under any obligation to do that anyway.
Right.
They're not under any obligation to show up and save you or protect your property or you. None whatsoever.
So now they'll just be, essentially paid bureaucrats, and they'll just sit there and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
which is, to be honest, what most of them do anyway.
Well, yeah.
They don't even have protecting the serve on the side of the cars anymore.
Nope.
Right? They're not referred to as public servants anymore.
No.
They're referred to as law enforcement.
Yep.
Like, they have no duty to protect you, right? But nearly 700,000 people last year were arrested for cannabis possession.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of rape kits sit untested.
There was this, I think it was out of Minnesota last year.
Yeah, it was Minneapolis. It was the same police department that all this is going on with.
That there were so many untested rape kits in the evidence locker that they were collecting mold on the outside of the packaging.
Yep, that sounds about right.
This is not isolated in Minneapolis.
No, Dallas
nationwide.
Dallas, Texas had something like 10,000.
Seattle had several thousand.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Everywhere is like that. Chicago has a bunch. New York has a bunch. And then the New York PD, we're all so overworked that, we might just stop enforcing the law at all. And everyone's like you do now?
Right.
And they're all threatening to walk off the job. And I'm like, no, please don't. No, stop.
Well,
don't throw me into the briar patch.
That's like what happened in Buffalo, where those, was it 57 or whatever it was, cops resigned from the ERT because the two cops that physically abused an elderly man.
Because they got in trouble,
because they got in trouble for physically assaulting an elderly man because he wasn't able to move fast enough for their liking.
So anyone who's unfamiliar with it, I don't know how many people are unfamiliar anymore, but anyone who's unfamiliar, this guy is literally just walking down the street. He's not part of the protest. He's not there for the protest. He just is walking down the street. 75-year-old man. And one of the cops drops his helmet. And so to be helpful and polite, he picks up the helmet and walks towards some officers, because a bunch of them are walking past him, to hand the helmet to them. Like, hey, your buddy dropped this. And their response is to shove him, and not a gentle shove. This is a full-on serious shove to a 75-year-old man with a cane. He falls back so hard and hits his skull onto the concrete so hard, blood literally pours from his ear.
Yep. No.
As he lays unconscious.
And those two... Yeah, and the two cops that pushed him, they got in trouble, and in solidarity, the rest of the emergency response team, the ERT, quit. They didn't turn in their badge.
They quit being ERT.
They quit that task
force. They quit being ERT.
They effectively self-disbanded the ERT in response and said, well, we're not going to do anything special then.
Yeah.
Because, how dare you punish somebody who assaulted an elderly man who was trying to be helpful on video? How dare you punish them? So we're just going to go ahead and throw a tantrum and be a bunch of whiny little pansies.
Yeah.
But
there's your blue line.
Yeah, I was going to say there's your thin blue line, where they're all hiding behind each other because they shouldn't get in trouble because they're just doing their jobs.
Yeah. All right.
You know, the reality is that they talk about the thin blue line and they say, well, it's the thin blue line between chaos and order. And technically they're right, but they have which side is which wrong.
Right.
We are on the side of chaos because of that thin blue line. They're the thin blue line keeping us from getting to order.
Yeah. Can we, you know, I spend quite a bit of time on Twitter, probably more than I do on Facebook these days, but blue check marks. The people that have blue check marks have been my favorite to follow and fuck with, to troll. So tell me, Loren, you know who that is, right?
Oh yeah.
She says, "Here's an idea. You want to fund the police? Cool. You can opt out, but you don't get to call them for anything. You're on your own. Have fun. Good luck. I back the blue."
Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah. If that was an option,
as long as I get my taxes back that would normally go to the police department,
yeah, that would
I'm
be
on
sweet,
board.
man.
Hell yeah.
The very first response I see is Chuckles and Warren versus DC.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, oh, so you mean I'm on my own like I am now? Except now I don't have to pay for a service I don't want.
Yep.
Like, you know, but that's the thing, and that's there was that fantastic article that came out, and I forget who wrote it, and I'm sure somebody knows them that listens, but that article about it was from a few years ago, but it was why there are no good cops. And the gist of the article that it explains is they agree to enforce tyrannical laws. They agree to enforce violence against otherwise peaceful people, and they refuse to allow any alternative to exist and will violently attack that alternative should someone attempt it.
Are you talking about Robert Higgs?
Is it Higgs? I feel like it wasn't Higgs. No, it was.
He's got a really good quote about it.
Yeah, he's got a really good quote about it. This is like a full-on article.
I have from Higgs is the good cop, bad cop question can be disposed of decisively. We need only consider the following. 1, every cop has agreed as part of his job to enforce laws, all of them. 2, many laws are manifestly unjust or even cruel and wicked. 3, therefore every cop has agreed to act as an enforcer of laws that are manifestly unjust and even cruel and wicked. There are no good cops.
No.
Right, yeah, that's that quote.
The FEE or FEE.org, right?
Yeah, I think it was on FEE.
Yeah, Matt Gillian.
Yes. Yeah, that article. There are no good cops. It's a really good article, and it's definitely one to have saved in your favorites, because every time you say there are no good cops and somebody wants to come back at you, just that article. Boom. Just leave it there. Like, I mean, I disagree with him a little bit because he's a libertarian, not an anarchist, but
yeah, Ben Stone, he has a really good concept. Ben Stone has a really good podcast on that, where he calls it the Mayberry fallacy, right? Or the Andy Griffith versus Barney Fife.
Yeah. Andy Griffith is long dead.
No, not only that, but like Andy Griffith, even as good as his intentions were, as much as he wanted to help and as much good as he believed that he did, he still enforced immoral and unconstitutional laws.
Oh yeah, and you see that.
Absolutely.
I laughed a couple of years ago, and I think I actually laughed on this podcast about it a couple of years ago, where I said that I brought up that episode of Andy Griffith where Opie's like reading Robin Hood and watching 1950s Andy Griffith and Don Knotts try and explain why the sheriff isn't actually the bad guy in this story, and like try and come up with an excuse for why the sheriff isn't the bad guy and why the government isn't the bad guy in that story. And it's hilarious because it is word salad. Like, none of it is actually a meaningful thing that they say at all. And it's clearly just this
along those lines, God, we are so off track, but fuck track, we're anarchists. But
don't tell me what to do.
Most professional podcast on the internet.
all these videos of cops kneeling. There was a tweet that I saw and a couple of posts that I saw about it, and it was these cops kneeling and raising their hand in solidarity with protesters is like an abusive boyfriend buying you flowers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dead on. That is dead on what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry for everything that I've done and continue to do and will continue to do.
Change. I can change, I swear.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what it is.
And you know, I actually
laughs in 40% domestic.
I was just gonna say that because I have a friend. I have a friend from high school that she was married to a cop in one of those local towns, and he wasn't physically abusive that I'm aware of, but my God, was he a complete mind fuck on her.
Hey, abusive is abusive.
Abusive is abusive, absolutely.
Yep.
But I mean, she'll even say he never actually hit her, but every other word out of his mouth was blaming her for something that was his fault.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
That's because that's the personality that becomes a cop.
Yeah. All right.
Right.
Here's one from the Minnesota Public Radio News. Tired of watching their city burn, Minneapolis neighborhoods defend themselves.
Gosh!
Yes!
What? It's almost like they could have been doing that the whole time.
Yeah. After days of watching their city burn, frightened and angry Minneapolis residents mobilized Saturday night to protect their neighborhoods, setting up shifts to watch over blocks and barricading their streets to keep out troublemakers. Others patrolled neighborhood businesses, armed and ready to fight off arsonists or looters.
You know that
I love the picture at the top of that article. The store is called Casablanca Foods.
Casablanca Foods, yeah.
And there's three guys sitting outside with a blue Ford truck and it looks like a Ryobi spotlight that you'd use the batteries on. And the sign that propped up next to the truck says, "Looters and arsonists will be shot."
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
FYI, we're going to kill you if you try.
You loot, we shoot.
That's
yeah.
right.
Everyone likes to looty until the rooftops get shooty.
Or until they start speaking Korean.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of a couple of tweets here with some blue checks. And the first one is Nancy Yang, and she says, these are the types of discussions happening in Minneapolis right now. And the picture is, my neighbors helped hold the line at, and it's redacted, most of the night. They did not get the daycare center next to us. If we can get more people to do like we did, we can stop them from burning our neighborhood. If you have a dog or a gun or some kind of weapon and gather in groups at your alley and streets, you can stop them from moving through. Show that you will not be intimidated and will defend yourselves.
Gee, it's almost like communities that can band together armed and determined can in fact police and defend themselves without government assistance.
Yeah.
It's almost like there might have been something about that. What was that? There was some kind of a document or something that may have been intentionally written for that purpose.
It says something about a militia, I think.
And something about shall not be infringed.
I don't.
The word regulated's in there somewhere, but it's not like today's definition of regulated.
It means well maintained. Yeah, like a well maintained militia. I can't put my. I don't remember that one.
Being necessary. What was that? Oh, that's right. A well-regulated militia being necessary to a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be fucking infringed.
What do you mean by shall not be infringed? I'm very confused.
Right? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. So what you're saying is having guns and organizing and talking to your neighbors is a good way to, I don't know, prevent crime in your neighborhood?
Yeah. It's
almost like
what?
Yeah.
Kind of. It might actually work. It's just crazy enough to work.
I feel like there should be a Joe Biden soundtrack in the background. Just shoot him through the door.
You know, and like I posted the other day, at this point with Joe Biden, At
Jordan
this
Winkler's
point,
song "Buy a Shotgun" comes to mind.
yeah, all you have to do, all you have to do for effective firearm safety training is whatever Joe Biden says, don't do that.
Don't
do
do
the
that.
opposite.
That's right.
Like that's the whole course now, because he said to buy a shotgun and just cock it and shoot it in the air. He has said to we need to train people to just shoot attackers in the leg so that you don't kill them.
I would like to add that if you're
That-
in an
oh,
enclosed
hold on.
space and you shoot someone in the leg with a shotgun, as Joe Biden suggests, they're gonna die anyway because the thing's gonna take the leg off.
Well, he was talking about like cops with their guns, and I mean, even a pistol, a 9mm pistol in the leg. Yeah, you might miss important things,
But it's not likely.
Hold on.
but
I have to. We have, for accuracy's sake, we have to read Biden's full quote.
okay.
Okay.
We apologize.
If I can get through this,
If you lose
Hold
IQ
on,
points,
hold on,
we
okay.
apologize.
Trigger warning. Trigger warning.
I have to take a deep breath. I have to get through this in one take because I won't be able to do it again. Okay. He said this in a meeting with community leaders at Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware. Quote, instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at them with a knife or something, you shoot them in the leg instead of the heart is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that could change.
What? Unarmed? Armed with a knife.
Instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at them with a knife or something, you shoot them in the leg instead of the heart is a very different thing.
Unarmed with a knife. I'm sorry, if you're coming at me with a knife, I don't care. I'm gonna put 5 in your chest.
I'm pretty sure that counts as being armed. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I'm fairly certain that if you were to if you were to rob someone,
it may make an appearance in that case. I mean, yeah. I'm just saying.
I mean, again, I'm no lawyer, but I feel like, if you were to rob someone with a knife, they would count that as armed robbery.
Yeah.
Maybe
21 foot rule. 21 foot rule. I'm telling you. What's it? An armed assailant? Was it the average armed assailant can close 21 feet in like a second and a half, which is like the average draw time?
Yep, basically. Yeah. If you start drawing as they come at you, you are going to be shoving the barrel into their chest and pulling the trigger. Yeah. So it's, I mean,
in that case, I know, having been in that situation, they never got to the point where they started charging me, but when they started to encircle, I started backing up as best I could to my only exit. But as I'm retreating, my weapon came out of its holster. And at that point, they all like, oh, never mind. We want nothing to do with this. And they went the other direction. But, I mean...
just the idea that you would try and... I mean, let's ignore that he's talking about cops for a minute, because I think we all agree the cops shouldn't exist anyway. So that's an irrelevant point. But when you're talking about somebody attacking you, and you're saying you're so insane and so divorced from the reality of gunplay that you think that shooting them in the leg, one, is going to stop a determined attacker. Spoiler alert, it won't. Two,
this is the same line of thinking that told people at at Colorado State to urinate themselves because that will make the rapist disgusted.
Yeah, exactly. And then they'll be like, ew, gross, and it'll turn them off. Like, no, that isn't how it fucking works. That isn't how this works. That isn't how any of this works. Like, no, if you shoot somebody in the leg and they are a determined attacker, you have not stopped them. If, however, you shoot them in the leg and they're not really a determined attacker, but you were scared, you do stand a significant potential of severing an artery, and they will bleed out inside of 10 minutes. Like, you're still going to kill them. You're just going to make it hurt more. Like, just say rapist, no raping, and then they'll go, oh man, and then they'll stop. Oh man, and they walk off. Yeah, no, that only works if you also have a monkey.
That's
We
true.
do.
And
You
your
have-
backpack holds fucking everything.
And you have a map that is very sure of who he is.
You got a song about your backpack.
I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm the map. It's
Yeah,
that song is like
it's obviously we're all dads here.
yeah, that's
Right?
exactly. But it's like that song is like the executive was supposed to write that and then didn't, and then he came into the meeting and they're like, "So, did you come up with the song for the new character?" And he was like, "Yeah. I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm the map." Oh, okay. All right. What character would be singing this?
All right. How about
Oh, good Lord.
a positive article? Oh, it's
I don't know, I
positive.
think
It's
that-
positive-ish, right? Okay.
I was gonna say the people arming up in their own neighborhoods and actually talking to their neighbors. That sounds pretty positive to me.
Well,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on perspective, but I agree it's completely positive. But this one is it actually has some Boog Boys, and it's a positive article, but it calls them libertarians, and in the video they have libertarians in quotation marks. So it's armed and then libertarians at protest.
Like they don't believe that actually exists, and
it's
like that's how I'm reading that. Is they're like, I don't actually know what that is because my entire knowledge of the political spectrum is hard left or hard right, and I don't think there's anything else.
I don't know. This is Wisconsin. I don't know. This is out of Milwaukee. It's
Well, that's mostly hard left.
yeah, it's a WISN 12 ABC.
Yep.
But the article says armed libertarians joined a protest Wednesday night in Milwaukee. Video shows a group of several armed protesters carrying long guns at the Black Lives Matter march through the east side of Milwaukee. Matt Wild, who runs the website Milwaukee Record, has been documenting the protest. Quote, "Do you feel people around them were nervous?" WISN 12 news reporter Hillary Mintz asked. Quote, "There were some folks who were nervous, some folks who were talking to them, asking why they were there, saying their presence with firearms was not welcome. There's a lot of conflicting information about them." WISN 12 tracked down the armed group that was out there, and organizers said they're part of the nationwide Boogaloo movement. "Who are you?" Mintz asked. Quote, "We are a libertarian movement for the pro-liberties of American cities, no matter your race, creed, gender, sexuality, any of that. We
All
do not,
American citizens.
yeah, we do not accept white nationalists. We do not accept white supremacists. We do not accept racism of any kind." Sounds good to
Amen.
me, right?
Well, so far, no lies detected. I mean,
Yeah.
At one point during the protest, the armed men met up with protest organizers and hugged. Quote, "The video that I shared about meeting up with the protest leaders and showing them that we're not a threat to them, we're here to protect them. Wisconsin is an open carry state, therefore citizens can carry long guns. Milwaukee police said they were aware of the group and that open carrying long guns was legal. No arrest were
Yep.
made."
Anything that you can own in Wisconsin, you can open carry.
that's right. There are some rules as far as like for long guns. Like it has to be, I think it's 2 steps away from being ready to fire if you carry a long gun. So like chambering around and taking the safety off is a step. But if
I
it's a
don't-
pistol, it's locked, cocked, and ready to rock.
No, I don't even know if that's the case, to be honest. I mean, I'd have to double check, but I think long guns you can also carry just safety on, and that's still legal in Wisconsin. I know that, yeah, for sure with pistols, you can just if you can legally own it, you can legally carry it.
Right.
And it's fully loaded, ready to go. And it's fine.
I get some dirty looks from the some of the county boys around here when I open carry my AR pistol, because they look at it and then they come up to me like, "Where's your Form 4?" I was like, "Pistol, not rifle."
It's a pistol ass hat.
Get shot in California.
That's when you just oh wait, hang on, I have a permit. It just says I can do whatever I want.
When I really want
It just says get bent.
Yeah, fuck off.
So, all right, here we got another one. We got another one out of Lowell, Michigan. Lowell, Michigan. The Lowell police chief was forced to resign just days after a controversial Facebook post that supported young men who had armed themselves against potential protesters. Chief Stephen Bukala, or Bukala, Bukala, whatever.
Sounds about right.
Was told to resign by 5 p.m. Thursday or he'd be fired at 5:01, according to documents obtained Friday by News 8. He resigned by email. Quote, I've decided to start my life outside of the Lowell Police Department and my future looks bright. The Lowell Police Department on its Facebook page had posted earlier this week about 4 men who armed themselves to patrol the city. Quote, we at the Lowell Police Department support legally armed citizens and the Second Amendment, the chief wrote on the department's Facebook page. Nothing controversial about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That led to a flurry of comments between residents, with the chief defending the right to open carry. It also led to city manager Michael Burns to order the chief to remove the sentence in support of the 4 men. On his personal Facebook page, the sheriff posted a photograph of the 4 armed men on Tuesday, 3 days right after the Grand Rapids riot. He wrote, quote, so these fine young men called me today. They wanted to exercise their Second Amendment rights and walk down Main Street. They saw what happened in Grand Rapids. They said it's not going to happen here. We have your backs. I thank them for letting me know they were in town and to call if they see something. The Lowell Police Department on Thursday apologized on its Facebook page for what it called a, quote, ill-considered message posted by the Lowell Police Department Facebook page. We then defended this message, arguing with residents or dismissing their concerns. Quote, we must take this opportunity to listen and to learn so we can work together to defeat racism and build a more just and equitable society.
What the hell does that have to do with racism?
What? Evil Knievel couldn't make that leap.
The city manager cited Bukla for violating the city's policy, including, quote, conduct unbecoming of a police officer, and quote, personnel should not allow or shall not allow personal feelings to influence their personal or professional conduct.
So he's actually upholding the fucking Constitution. He's supposed to.
The post, quote, inserted political and debatable issues into a departmental notice, which caused unneeded concerns by some of the city's residents.
Debatable?
Your actions created an unnecessary negative portrayal of the and some citizens' views.
Fuck them.
Wait a second.
First of all, like, fuck those citizens.
Weren't we just talking about this piece of paper? I mean, granted, none of us believe in this piece of paper anymore. But weren't we just talking about this? About this people having the constitutional fucking right to carry it?
So to put this in perspective, right? Let's kind of reductio ad absurdum this.
Okay, so there's the picture of the 4 kids, all fucking opie looking dudes, with the former chief's caption.
Yeah.
Nothing intimidating, nothing scary.
Yeah. They showed up with guns, stopped by, said, hey, FYI, we're here, we're armed, but
they called the police department before
So they call and they say, hey, we're here, we're armed, but you know what? We're not trying to cause trouble just in case anyone freaks out. We want to let you know all we're doing is we're just trying to protect the businesses during the protests. That's all we're here for. We're not here to do anything to anybody. And he goes, cool. All right, awesome. You're just trying to protect the community. That's great. And says, hey, these fine young gentlemen showed up and protected the community. And that's controversial.
Because according to the city administrator, the organization that has absolutely no responsibility to protect anything should be the only ones trying to protect things.
Apparently, no one is allowed to protect anything ever, period. Like that's what I'm gathering.
Like, the only controversy, there's nothing controversy there. It's 4 opie looking kids with firearms wanting to protect their community, which is a beautiful thing in my opinion.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's wonderful.
It doesn't matter whether they're black, brown, whatever.
No, I don't care
white,
what they look like as long
green,
as they're out
orange,
there doing the right thing.
punk rock, rainbow. I don't care. They called the police to let them know they were going to be out there, just in case anybody freaked out. Obviously, nobody freaked out. Otherwise, that would be like the main point of the article. And they posted a picture saying, hey, thank you guys for defending the community. And then defended the law, which was open carry. And that was controversial enough for the city manager to demand his resignation.
Yeah, because he said, well, I support the law. And the same
To be
manager's like, well, I don't
perfectly
happen
honest-
to like that law, so therefore I don't like your post.
Like,
You know,
literally,
to be perfectly honest, if I was that police chief, I would have
this-
let him fucking fire me.
This is a bureaucrat firing an elected official.
Yep.
I'm just putting
Yep.
that out there.
Just consider that for a minute. Marinate on that idea. Oh, but your vote counts. Don't worry.
Yeah, your
Right.
actions create an unnecessary negative portrayal of the city in some citizens' view.
Who the fuck cares? If I vote for the wrong thing as part of the city council, I create a negative thing in some people's view. Fuck them. What?
Yeah. Inserted political and debatable issues into a departmental notice, which caused unneeded concern by some cities' residents.
Why is it fucking debatable?
Yeah, I love the
It's
debatable.
not political or debatable.
He said, hey, these guys were well within their rights, legal
To do
rights.
what
They
they-
showed up, and I appreciate what they did because they were just helping. And that is debatable and concerning in some of
How?
these people's.
Where? Find me a point somewhere in this that's fucking debatable. And I would love to have a conversation about it.
How dare you enjoy citizens willing to protect things? What?
How dare you exercise your rights that shall
It's
not
because
be infringed?
It's because but the reason for this is because that there's this such a rhetoric in this country
the
to
chief-
try and whip people into this frothy, impotent rage
Yep.
about things like guns that they just lose their fucking minds.
Yep. Last year, the chief was given the Medal of Valor for saving someone from drowning.
And this year, because he said, "Hey, these kids who did nothing wrong were great,"
Mhm.
he's been
with the city since 1995, and he's been the chief since 2013.
So he's been a cop for the city with the city for 25
5
years. And they've
Yeah.
made him leave for doing his job,
for upholding his oath.
upholding his oath.
Hey, at least there was protest to his forced resignation. So that did have this article posted today.
There should
Does-
be armed protests.
Dozens of demonstrators.
Tread on those who tread on you.
Forced resign. Let's see. Come on, stupid pop-up ads.
Not that I would ever encourage anybody to, build a armored bulldozer or something and drive it down Main Street. I would never ever encourage anybody to do that.
Well,
I
yeah,
would-
no one should.
I would.
But
No one should
Brandenburg,
ever do that,
Brandenburg v. Ohio says that.
but I don't think anyone should do that. But no, what I was saying though is like it should have been an armed protest just to make a point, because like all these people are freaking out about the fact that these kids had guns, and I guarantee you that's what they objected to. So everyone should have protested armed.
Absolutely. I think everybody who goes to a protest ought to be armed, because there'd be a hell of a lot less tear gassing and rubber bullet shooting at the crowds.
Oh, there'd be no rubber bullet shooting for sure. There might still be tear gassing, but no rubber bullet shooting. I can guarantee you that. If it's an armed crowd, ain't nobody shooting rubber bullets at them.
That's true.
If somebody's going to open fire with anything, we know what they're opening fire with. It ain't rubber.
Hashtag Kent State.
Yeah, exactly. Those are unarmed students.
They threw rocks. Okay, that's nice.
And
They threw rocks that hit them in their ballistic helmets.
oh no, whatever shall we do?
Yeah, oh no, I got a bump on my helmet. It scratched the paint. I'm mad.
That rock hit that armored vehicle right behind me. It scared me, so I shot him.
Yeah. I mean, I could spend all day talking about the finer points of Kent State and having interviewed a couple of the National Guardsmen who were there and who fired and talked to them years ago and what they said. And oh God, I could just go on about that one and how it was absolutely unjustifiable murder. But
Well, I actually was able to once upon a time talk to one of the protesters that was there. And they're like, yeah, we threw rocks at them because they were all already pointing their guns at us.
yeah, with bayonets fixed, by the way.
With bayonets fixed. So they're already pointing weapons at us, and we're like, we're going to get shot. So we started defending ourselves with what we had, which was rocks.
Well, I mean, it's a peaceful demonstration until they show up. And that's what we're seeing now in Minneapolis and Chicago and in Los Angeles and in all of these cities where all of these protests are happening. As long as the police don't show up to riot, no riot happens.
That's right.
It isn't until they show up. Look at La Crosse. We had a huge protest. I mean, we're not a huge city, right? Like we're a small town,
like 600
most places.
people that just did the last one.
Yeah. And it was completely peaceful, with the exception of the mayor's wife. But so, Jason, I don't know if you saw when I posted, but at our last protest here in town, the mayor's wife was maced in the face.
And she was the instigator.
And she was the
She was the
instigator.
instigator.
Yes. She went nuts on some dude for driving too fast past the protesters and chased him down the street. Because like that, all right, fine. If you're a bunch of people, you're protesting, you're marching in a car, whips past you at even 25 miles an hour, which if you're standing still and it goes close by, does seem like a huge speed. And it goes by you, all right, fine. I get going, hey, asshole, slow down, and flipping him off and then moving on. But she didn't do that. No. She ran an entire block up the street to ambush him at a red light, pounded on his hood, and then scratched him through his open driver's side window after he said, if you don't back off, I'm going to mace you. And so when she scratches him, he proceeds to mace the shit out of her.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
The best part is the LCPD said that it's been referred to the prosecutor's office for charges against her.
Don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
Exactly. She could have just walked away. I mean, the police were openly assisting the protests to be safe for everybody involved in terms of like they were blocking off roads and ahead of the protest and trying to do that, right? They weren't trying to interfere with it. They didn't show up in riot gear or anything. And so it just stayed peaceful. But everywhere that they show up in riot gear and they show up with SWAT teams and they show up with armored cars, if you want to know who's there for a riot, look at who showed up dressed for a riot. And it's not the protesters, it's them. There have been several articles that have come out that are headlines like police rioted this week. Police rioted over the weekend. And those are the properly written ones that point out that the people who started going nuts and getting super violent, they were not the protesters. They were the police.
I just saw an article there, or it wasn't an article, it was a video the other day. There was a woman and two other people, I couldn't tell what they were, standing with her in the middle of a street. 20 yards in front of them was a line of probably 30 cops. Full riot gear, shields, tear gas canisters, the works. And they ended up shooting her with a rubber bullet. They were the only ones there. Those three people were the only ones there. But the police felt it necessary to disperse the crowd.
Yeah, they did that here. They did that here in California, down near LA, and they shot a a homeless guy in a wheelchair.
I saw that.
They shot him
face
in the fucking face with a rubber bullet. And there's another one. I think it was I was also here in California. I think it was San Jose or Fresno or one of those in the South Bay area. But there's a guy. Or no.
Are you talking about the one where the guy gets shot in the face with the tear gas canister?
No. There was another one where the guy actually works with the police on like race relations and whatnot. Like he's an intermediary.
Oh yeah, and they beat him.
He's an intermediary between the minority people and the police. Like he has the police chief on speed dial, and the police were harassing this group of kids. Because the kid had a skateboard or something like that, and the guy like came over and he was like 15 feet away, and trying to intervene but stay out of the situation, and the police turned the guns on him and shot him like several times, and one of them hit him in the groin and actually ruptured one of his testicles, and he had to have emergency surgery, and they're not sure if he can have kids now.
What did I just say last week? The last episode where I talked about the rubber bullets and what happens if you get hit in the fucking testicles. That's exactly what I said. It shatters them.
They are not non-lethal. They're less
than lethal. And that's I had that conversation in depth with somebody who wasn't really a gun person or a military person the other day. I said, so what you need to realize with less than lethal, and the reason why it's gone from non-lethal to less than lethal, is that if you are firing something with sufficient mass at sufficient speed, it can kill somebody, even if the chances are low that can occur. Mm-hmm. So lethal is lethal. Like if I'm firing a chunk of metal at 2,500 feet per second at you, I intend to kill you. That's a lethal round. But when I'm shooting something that's, they have those rubber rings that they shoot out of shotguns. Yep. They have the beanbags that they shoot out of shotguns. They have rubber bullets.
Which they use for bears. Just for predator control to scare bears out of an area.
Yeah, the idea is that it hits you hard enough that it hurts and can break bones, but it isn't enough to outright kill you. But the thing is it's not non-lethal. It's not safe because if I shoot you close, I can still kill you even with a goddamn beanbag.
Well, it's like that.
Johnny Knoxville took a shot from a beanbag in Jackass. I don't know if you guys remember that video.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it fucked his shit up for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Well, there was that video. I think it was in Salt Lake City the other day.
Yeah.
Where they had the guy pinned to the ground, and they shot him point blank in the back with a beanbag. They are lethal at that range. Just because it's a less than lethal round doesn't mean it can't kill you. If you get hit directly in the eyeball by a rubber bullet, directly in the temple, if you get hit in the throat,
that happened to a alternative news reporter in the Dallas area. He got hit.
That was a tear gas canister,
and it ruptured his eye. Yeah, and he lost his eye.
Oh yeah, and he was literally there as press. So there's a lot of people, especially on the bootlicking right, trying to justify. He was there as press.
Yeah,
and he was covering it. He wasn't participating.
The bootlicking right. The people say, "Oh, just obey the law." Blah 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 blah. And these are the same people that will. The Second Amendment is absolute. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, it's okay if the police shoot a reporter and commit a literal war crime." Yeah, and that's the thing is you got to remember under the Geneva Convention, or as we always used to half-heartedly laugh, kind of tongue-in-cheek, Geneva suggestions. The
hashtag ask Iran about depleted uranium.
Yeah, exactly. I've pointed that out, like our ROE, we would literally be in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary if we did even half of the things that the police are doing. The targeting of the press, targeting of medical personnel, misuse of helicopters labeled as medical. These are all actual listed war crimes in the Geneva Convention that the United States signed. and agreed to, which means that the United States will happily prosecute someone, a foreign soldier, for doing those things and call them a war criminal.
Meanwhile, the cops at home are doing it themselves.
But the police are getting encouraged to do it.
Putin. Did you see Putin's?
Oh, that was a
Oh,
beautiful
that was
troll.
amazing.
Beautiful
Oh
troll.
my goodness.
I
That was
loved it.
beautiful. All right.
Like he's a psychopathic oligarch, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But occasionally the man is just comedy gold. And he knows. He knows when he sees that opportunity, he goes for it and is like, hey, you guys should really respect the freedom of the press and to assemble, huh? Like, oh damn. I loved, did you see, I saw an article, I don't know how veracious it is, but something about I want to say it was Iran, like threatened sanctions against the United States because of its failure to observe like human rights in regards to the press. Like, it was freaking great. I laughed so hard. I'm like, yes.
Turnabout's fair play, bitches.
Exactly. It wasn't. I mean, there are tweets that exist from Donald Trump saying like how horrible it is that Iran is attacking its protesters and its media, you know, and its reporters and AP reporters and stuff, and how awful this is and how wrong it is. And like, there are tweets. Even Tom Woods, the same guy who called for no quarter being given to the protesters. Like,
Yeah.
and he's a former military. He knows what no quarter means. It's not an exaggeration to say that he literally means kill them all. When he says no quarter, the same guy was the one who said that we should deploy the United States military to Hong Kong to protect the protesters because what was being done to them was a violation of human rights.
Yeah.
And can we speak about just for a second about the use of tear gas? And isn't there something about that in the Geneva Convention as well, about that being illegal under the convention rules?
Yes,
hold
that's
on.
a war crime.
Before we get, let's talk about the use of tear gas during a respiratory pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, and then all those doctors who brought up that you do realize that this increases the chances significantly of transmission.
Like, and all the politicians are like, businesses are still closed, quarantine's still in effect, social distancing is still in effect, unless
But
you're at
go
a protest.
protest.
No,
Yeah.
no,
So
you
that
can't.
racetrack-
No, you can't cut hair. Go protest.
Yep,
Yeah,
go
so the
protest.
racetrack, there's a racetrack in North Carolina that in response
Uh-huh.
decided that their first race of the season was a peaceful protest
was a peaceful
against
protest,
depression,
and they
so
had
they were able to do it.
they had two they had like 2,000 people in the stands, and some of them had signs, and the governor lost his shit and threatened them and ordered the sheriff to close them down, and then they had a race today with nobody in the stands. Yeah.
Oh, I love that shit. I love that they're like, oh no, it's a peaceful we're racing for justice.
All right.
Is what we're doing.
All right,
Race.
we got one more article, and then we got another subject I want to tackle, and that one's going to be the long one. We don't have any stripper stories this week. We broke our streak. I'm sorry.
Damn it.
Hang on, give me a second.
We could talk about medical professionals out of the UK recommending wearing masks while having sex, but that's not fun. All right.
Yeah.
So let's
Some
talk.
people are into that. So.
Let's talk about how it should be done. Right? We talk about people's reaction. We talk about people losing their mind and all this stuff. This is how it should have been done from the very beginning. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Andrew and I have talked about this quite a bit in the last 2 weeks or last week or so, but
I actually
and then Dan and I talked about it, and we literally all want to move to Coeur d'Alene now. But okay. Quote, we don't want violence. That's the last thing we want is violence. Self-proclaimed Boogaloo Boys among the armed Idahoans at protest. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Protests throughout the week have been peaceful so far in Coeur d'Alene, but what's different is the amount of armed Idahoans who say they are protecting the city. In Coeur d'Alene, it seems that everyone is on the same page. Black Lives Matter protesters want their voice heard and change to happen. Armed Idahoans want their voice heard, as does the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, and they all want it done peacefully. But one group in particular stood out from the rest Monday night, and not just because of the colorful Hawaiian shirts, the so-called Boogaloo Boys. To listen to the self-identified member who spoke to KHQ on the condition that we don't use his name, the message was one of unity. Quote, I'm more than welcoming to BLM protest. I want their voice to be heard. I know that myself as a straight white male in the U.S. I know that I don't know what it's like to be a black male person or black female person. I have no idea at all, so I want their voices heard. Several men seen in Coeur d'Alene Monday night, all wearing Hawaiian shirts, all heavily armed. The members we spoke with said that they were there to protect property and protesters out of their belief in freedom for all. Quote, we're there in arms. We were there in arms. We can make us look a bit, white supremacy racist, but no, we don't believe any person of color should be armed, or we believe that any person of color should be armed to protect themselves. And then it goes on to talk about Las Vegas, which is completely bullshit, and talks about Boogaloo and the definition and Boogaloo 2, Electric Boogaloo, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to talk about the Anti-Defamation League, which...
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, no, the funny thing is when you actually read those articles as a Boog Boy, when you read those articles and knowing the memes and a lot of the meme jokes and the puns and plays on words that we do and stuff, seeing reporters who are neither Boog people nor like meme oriented internet people, nor even particularly in the realm of hip or with it in any way, shape, or form, try to explain the different names that get used and watch them struggle to explain why this is a thing. And it's just like, you really don't get it at all. You can't wrap your head around it in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's interesting and should be noted that it's such a complete struggle for so many people to even understand the point.
Mm-hmm. Because people are so conditioned in this country to believe that the police defend our freedoms, they defend our rights and all that good stuff. They're so conditioned to believe that the military fights for freedom. They're so conditioned to believe that without government, there would be absolute chaos. And it's literally because the government has a 13-year, 15,000-hour mandatory indoctrination program that has been in effect for multiple generations now.
Well, it isn't even just that. Look at how much the government infiltrates. There's government propaganda on your television. There's government propaganda in your movies. There's government propaganda in a bunch of your music, if you listen to country music in particular. There's government propaganda in newspapers. There's government propaganda at sporting events, and there's the military flyovers and the national anthem and saluting of the flag at NFL games and baseball games and all this, and even like marathons at the beginning of marathons, and it's everywhere. It's constantly inundating you. And what's really creepy is when you consider that the last time that anyone saw that level of nationalism infiltrating everything was in Germany in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah. Are you saying there's a correlation there? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, like my message that apparently was only dubiously popular about D-Day. Because remember D-Day, we're recording this on June 7th.
Mm-hmm.
D-Day was yesterday.
Back when anti-fascists were actually men.
Yes.
to fighting actual fascism.
Yeah, when
Right.
they were fighting National Socialism, and and in the message I pointed out, and I posted on Hootenanny Roundup as well, that the reason why D-Day matters so much this year is because we are really, really seeing the rise of National Socialism in the United States again, in a very real, dramatic, recognizable, and undeniable way. We're seeing it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
they call it democratic socialism now.
Well, not even just the democratic socialists, because the open democratic socialists, I think everyone agrees that they're very close to the Nazis.
Uh-huh.
But you're
Unless
seeing
you
it
talk to them.
but you're seeing it on the political right. You're seeing it on the political left. You're seeing it everywhere. You're even seeing it infiltrate the Libertarian Party, which is a dumpster fire. Don't get me wrong, but you're even seeing that.
Dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's a flaming fucking dumpster. But you're seeing it everywhere, every political arm and all over the place. You're seeing the rise of this, and it's really scary being a historian for me to look at it and go, "Sweet Christ, it's happening again."
Yeah,
And I'm watching it. I'm watching it happen.
And it's almost a century later.
Yeah.
well, I mean,
But when you really look at it in the U.S., I mean, this has been boiling and coming to the surface since, I would make an argument since the 60s. But
Since
it's
the 50s. Literally
the 50s,
since
yeah.
World War II ended, it
Right.
started here.
I mean, so it's really been, but it's been a slow boil here in the U.S. And it's finally starting to come to a rolling boil. And people don't even notice it because, like Jason said, of their 15,000 hour, 13-year indoctrination.
Well, like, yeah, even the so-called opposition to socialism, right, which is conservatism. Even conservatism has a huge basis among collectivism,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And all those like the farm subsidies, the military contracts, all this like these have their base principles of socialism in them.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
I mean,
they're blatantly socialist. But don't ever point that out to conservatives. I'm not a socialist just because someone names it that. And I'm like, no, just because someone names it something that isn't socialism doesn't make it not socialism. It's still
Right.
socialism. And
what is taxation but a redistribution of wealth?
exactly. What is and like I love pointing out and going socialized police, socialized military. And they watch their heads explode, because immediately when they're like, that's not socialist, really. So is it a collective responsibility to pay for it? Are you collectively taking money and then collectively paying for something that you're arguing is collectively benefiting people? Do you understand where I'm going here? How this
But
like,
who will build the roads, comrade?
yeah, exactly. It's we must support both glorious people's revolutionary guard, comrade. It's just
it's the Democratic People's Republic of the United States.
yeah, and then you'll get so like and you'll get that, and you'll get so much, and it's important to remember your audience when you're arguing with somebody, because there is no major difference between National Socialism and communism. In fact, Hitler devotes almost all of Mein Kampf to try and argue that but I mean, I realize that this looks just like their communism, but it's not. I promise. Like, because it's only for Germans, and so it's different.
It's only for Germans, but we're going to invade the rest of the world.
Right, but this is the funny thing. Well, that was because it was a vampire economy. But this is the funny thing, is that what you see when you argue with conservatives, if you point out that it is socialism and it is communism, and you make it a point to compare them to the Soviet Union and communist China. Stay away from calling them Nazis, because if you compare them to Nazis, then they'll just dismiss you as libtard and pretend that makes them win, because they're a pigeon shitting on the chessboard and walking away.
Right.
So don't do that. Compare them to the Soviet Union, Because when you do that, it's way harder for them to wiggle out of. And usually what you'll realize their argument is, well, but it's different because it's for America. And it's just for Americans. And I'm like, no, this is different because this is for the German people only. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because it's the exact same argument that Hitler makes throughout Mein Kampf, and that's the same argument that you're making now for why this is okay. It's the exact same argument. The horrifying thing is, if I rewrote Mein Kampf and I changed Germany to America, you would agree with it, you psychopaths.
All right, let's circle back around. How do we prevent that? Right, we prevent that through how?
Education is number one. Educating people,
Absolutely.
doing exactly what I was just talking about, pointing these things out and getting them to recognize that cognitive dissonance. And it might not work right away, but you're planting seeds. You know, the little
You're
seeds
making them
there,
ask questions.
yeah, where they start to go, oh, hey. And if you're predicting things like, you know what you're going to see is because of this and this, because I'm looking at it objectively, I know that it's going to wind up being this thing in a year. And this is going to happen. And that's going to happen. And you know what? They might not believe you today. They might not listen to you. But in a year, when exactly what you said was going to happen happens, they'll go, oh, it's exactly what he said was going to happen. And you planted that seed of doubt, and now it's growing. You know, it's
I had this conversation, actually. I have a friend that lives in St. Louis, and she was hardcore, you know, on the I must stay home because of the Rona. And I was like, no, you got to look at the broader picture. And I kept slowly trickling more doubt in. And it took probably a good month and a half. And then all of the news stories started coming out saying all of the things that I had been saying to her for the last month and a half. And she's like, I'm starting to believe you. Good.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's there's so many people, especially on social media. And social media is really, really bad at it. There's so many people that when it comes to these issues and these discussions, it's pedal to the metal. And they go all out 100%. And then if they don't get it in like 3 comments or 3 messages, then out come the ad hominems.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. Like I had a conversation. I mentioned it before. I was talking to Christopher. I had a conversation on Instagram. I made a post about police accountability on Instagram, and somebody reached out to me and asked me if I thought all police were bastards. And we had a really good conversation about it. And it was calm and it was chill, and I introduced her to somebody. Like, she had no idea. She had never heard the idea before that police did not have a duty to protect people. And I mentioned it to her, and I sent her, and she asked for a link, and I sent her 2 or 3 links about it. And then she asked about, it totally blew her mind. And she started talking about, oh, what do we pay them for? Blah, 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 blah. And then we got to talking about victimless crime. She has chronic medical problems. And we started talking about the cannabis and how police in 2018, they arrested someone for cannabis possession like once every 78 seconds or something like that. Right. It was like, and it's like 600 something thousand people were arrested for cannabis, and most of them were arrested for simple possession. Right.
Yep, which is personal use.
Yep.
Yeah, and then that led me, and then she talked about the money, and I was like, hey, check this out. Check out these rape kits that are untested and collecting mold, and like that really set her off. But she messaged me back today, and she's like, yeah, I sent my boyfriend all those links, and we were talking about it, and like we looked up libertarianism, and I was like, what?
It's a step in the right direction.
It sure is.
You go ahead and
between-
read.
Yeah, difference between an honest libertarian and an anarchist is 6 months or less.
18.
Yeah, roughly.
18.
18 months.
18 months. I couldn't let go of the piece of paper, man.
See,
I came from the militia movement. It was all about that piece of paper. It was really hard for me to let go.
Well, to be fair, I kind of side with Jason on whether 6 months or 18 months, because I was hardcore in the libertarian column from like 2012 through, but I was in the same boat. It was, that piece of paper. It was, the Constitution was everything. And then I got to talking to you more, unfortunately, Andrew.
I literally had a copy of the Constitution hanging on my wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that bad.
See, and I've had a Declaration of Irish Independence hanging on my wall for a long time. So, and I focused, I always focused on the Bill of Rights and didn't give a shit about the rest of it. That is what it amounted to. Like, I focused on the Bill of Rights. I didn't give a shit about the rest of it because I was like, no, I care about what's restricting what government can do and says what I get to do. And I don't care. And it didn't take a whole lot of push for me to realize that at most, at worst, I was a libertarian. And once I started getting into libertarianism, very, very quickly, I started talking to anarchists, and very quickly they made more sense, because I was like, but logically, if government will always wind up overstepping its bounds, which it very clearly will, and logically, if less government, and the less government you can get, the better, then zero government is best.
Right.
So,
and that actually, you and I having that exact conversation is what pushed me over the edge.
See, that's why I can convert people to anarchism much more easily when they're coming from a conservative background than when they're coming from a leftist background, because the leftists really religiously commit to this idea that government is needed because we need justice, and government is apparently the only one who can deliver it.
Well, yeah, you guys both also have a tool that I can't use, and that's the veteran angle.
Yeah. And I think that's also why I wound up an anarchist so fast, is because, I mean, even unlike Chris, like, I've been in combat, I've seen how little rights matter to the government when push comes to shove, and how easy it is to just go, I don't give a shit about your rights, and I don't give a shit about what the Geneva Convention says, and I don't give a shit about what any of this says. When you can go, at the end of the day, you can alleviate your conscience by saying, well, but it was because government said I needed to do this. It's not me. It's them. They're saying it. So it's okay. I have that protection. And it's so easy to do that I understand why a lot of cops, that's their justification. Well, it's just following orders. And I understand, and again, this is not me endorsing that or saying that that's actually a moral argument or anything, but I'm saying that I understand from personal experience why they have those thoughts, why even the SS and the Einstadts and the Gestapo and things had those arguments at Nuremberg. I was just following orders, because you defer all of your personal moral agency over to the government. And so when the government's corrupt, you're corrupt. That's just the way it works. So it's easy to defer that and go, well, it's not my fault. And seeing that and having seen that in person, it was really easy for me to become an anarchist, because it didn't take a lot for people to go, well, but they don't care about people's rights, and they don't care about, no matter what you try, it's not going to make a difference. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I've seen it. So
yeah,
it was really easy for me. I was one of those people. Like, I was awful. Like, and I'll compare it, and I don't give a shit what atheists have to say. You guys can eat my ass. I don't give a shit. It's the same thing as what Paul points out when he talks about having converted, when he goes from Saul to Paul in the Bible, where he says, I was the worst of sinners before I was saved. And he's talking about the fact that he literally persecuted Christians himself personally before he was converted. And it's the same thing for me with like anarchism, where I literally actually went after people who were just trying to live their lives and just wanted to be left alone, and actually actively attempted to end their lives. before I became one of those people who just wants to live my life and wants to be left alone and became an anarchist. So I understand it far more in depth. Like, it means it's a way more personal crusade for me because I'm also making up for all of the shit that I pulled on the government's behalf, because it was a lot of fucking shit.
So all right, on that angle, since you're ranting and your rants are some of my favorite, so I might be biased, but if you were on the line right now, Boog, full kit, in gear, rifle in hand, and you had the opportunity to talk to one of these police officers out there, what would you say?
I'd tell them, look, biggest thing, and that's, I see a lot of protesters doing it. Look at yourself in the mirror. Look at
God,
what
I fucking love that. During the Oscar Grant riots here like 2015, the protesters carried like these 4-foot long mirrors, and they stood in front of the officers and showed the officers exactly what they fucking looked like. And a lot of the officers, you could see the pain on their faces.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at what you are. Consider what you have become and what you are. And is this really the way that you see yourself internally?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this, do you believe that you're being heroic? Do you believe that you're honestly being someone who's helping anything? That you're the best person to just enforce all of this and to do it? Because look at what you are allowing them to make you. And that's the big thing for me. That was the big thing for me. And that was the big thing that I think they should look at, is look at what they made you into.
Mm-hmm.
What you let them turn you into. Mm-hmm. This is not who you are. This is not what you wanted to be. And this is what they're making you. They are making you into a monster, and you are letting them do it.
Yeah, look at, it was pointed out the other day, and I went back and I watched the video, and I saw it for myself. Look at the nonchalant attitude that Derek Chauvin has when he's kneeling on George Floyd's neck.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not a care in the world. Totally chill. No distress, no sweating, no change of facial features at all.
Yep.
He literally could not care less that this man under his knee is suffering. Mm-hmm. And that, in my opinion, is one of the most troubling aspects of this case.
Oh yeah, and
absolutely.
That's a byproduct of the militarization and having a lot of guys who served in combat.
The warrior cop ethos.
Yeah, guys who served in combat coming back and training these cops, because like I can remember a certain commanding general having told everyone before we went into a city, let the stray dogs feed on their corpses.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
And that was exactly the attitude that everybody had, and it carried forward. I mean, in Iraq anyway, it carried forward forever from there, where everyone had that attitude. No, you kill them, you watch them die slowly, you watch the dogs pick at their flesh before they're even dead, and you don't feel a damn thing because they're the enemy and they deserve it.
Yeah, us versus them. That's what it comes down to. They're not public servants, you guys. They're absolutely not public servants.
To answer your question, Jason, I actually did. I had the good fortune, I guess you could say, to speak to a friend of mine who, he's on my Facebook page. He knows how I feel about cops and everything. He was actually getting ready. One of the larger cities was looking for other cops from other jurisdictions willing to volunteer to come and help spell some of their guys, because they were working, 16-hour days and blah, 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 and getting tired and burned out, and they needed somebody to come and relieve them. And so he was getting ready to go, and I'm like, dude, don't freaking do it. And he's like, why not? I said, you're going to regret it. I know your personality. You're going to regret it. And he said, no, they need help. It's a bad situation. I said, dude, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go out there right now and Google U.S. riot police in the city you're going to. And he did. And I said, okay, now I want you to go and look up what the riot police look like in Hong Kong, in China,
Mhm.
in Russia, in pick a country, that we always aspire and say they're evil, we're good. I want you to do a apples to apples comparison and tell me that what you're doing is righteous and just by putting on that gear and standing the line. And he did that. While I was talking to him, he called them and said he wasn't coming.
Good.
I made him look at what he was going to become if he went down there.
Oh yeah, and I've done that. I did that with the protests here right now with a few people who are talking about, you know, going and helping out and stuff that I know, and I sent them a picture, and it's a carefully selected picture where it actually is not really indicated, of all of these protesters running, and there's tear gas being fired, and there's all sorts of riot police and everything else. And I was like, you're telling me that this is okay, that this is completely acceptable? I'm like, well, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm like, interesting. You know who did? Donald Trump, because it's from Iran. And I posted the entire post and with that quote about, you know, how Iran is tyrannical and wrong for doing this and blah, 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 from Donald Trump from Twitter, because he's a huge Trump supporter. And I posted and I sent it to him, and I'm like, you know, like, look, you guys are looking at going up there. I'm like, you just agreed with what Iran is doing because you thought it was here. How is it magically okay here? You know, in your soul, you know that this is wrong. And like, when I was doing what I was doing, I knew that it was wrong. Just inherently, I was aware. That's why you try and cover some of that stuff up. That's why you don't talk about it. That's why you get PTSD and why you get a lot of these psychological problems from it, is because you know that it's wrong, that you shouldn't be doing it, and you did it anyway, and knowing full well that this is not okay, and you do it, and like, it chews you up forever, and it never stops chewing you up. And like, I always try to point that out to people right before they go do that stuff, you know. And if I could talk to a cop before he goes to be on the riot line, like, talk about, dude, this, if you do these things, they will never go away. You will never forget them. They will always be there. They will always be chewing at your brain constantly that you did this. And every moment of your life forever going forward, when you have a moment to yourself idly, it's going to come back. And it, especially when you're even a little bit stressed, that's when it gets the worst. Is you're just a little bit stressed, and then you're on your own, and all of that shit comes back, and that's all you can think about, is all of those terrible things that you did, and they're just going to run through your mind. So don't do it, and don't put yourself in the position in the first place to have that problem where you did something wrong. Just don't do it. Don't go. Don't participate in that, because you know that you shouldn't be. Just don't. Yep. And then that way it never has to eat at you. You never have to have that problem. And I've made that argument to guys that are, I've talked to so many guys in like the National Guard too, that are like, you know, they're nearing the end of their enlistment and they want to like let it expire so that they can enlist in an active duty unit. Because, oh, I want to see action like you did. Dude, you do not want to see action like I did. No, nope. You don't. No. Trust me, you don't. No. I've literally pled with tears in my eyes with guys that I cared about to not go because I don't want to see them destroyed. And I'm like, you don't understand what this really is. You don't understand what you're really going to go do and what you're really doing. And you need to wake up before you make a decision that you can't.
I hate to say it, I hate that this exists, but there's a reason Red 22 exists. Right? 22 veterans a day commit suicide. There's a reason for that. And it's not because they're overly joyed and happy about their deployment.
Yeah, and it's not just because the VA abandons everybody when they come back. No. And it's not just because they're not getting the same benefits. It's not just because you miss that brotherhood, no matter how much people want to try and make it that. Because deep down, every one of us knows why. We all know why. It's because you're racked with guilt forever. And not just survivor's guilt. And people love to pretend that it's just survivor's guilt. It's not just that, although that plays a part. It's also guilt over what you personally did. No one else did it. And it's weird because after you do it and you look back on it and you think about it, it's almost like it's somebody else who did it. It wasn't you. It was somebody else. Like you were just watching as you did these things and just couldn't stop it. But you could have stopped it. You were a person. You had personal moral agency. You could have not done it, but you did it anyway, didn't you? And it's really hard to face. It's really, really hard to face. And there is no way you are ever going to get enough psychological counseling to actually undo that amount of guilt once you do it. Like these cops who are killing civilians. I mean, there's the dude who murdered what's his face who was crying and begging him not to kill him has PTSD.
Yeah, Philip. What's his face? Killed Daniel Shaver.
Daniel Shaver. Yep.
Yeah, the guy who killed Daniel Shaver has PTSD, and you know what? With as much as I don't think he should be getting any kind of disability pay for it, I guarantee you he does have PTSD. Because it never goes away. The fact that he did it, he will replay in his head that poor man begging him not to kill him and him killing him anyway will replay in his head every single day until he dies. Because sometimes justice takes the form of your own psychological issue.
So, yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
The only thing I would add to it is, and it's not even my story, it's my dad's story from Vietnam, this is the only story he ever personally told me about his time in service, or in theater, I should say, was they were out on patrol, standard patrol, and a little girl was carrying a basket, probably 8-9 years old, was carrying a basket and walking towards their vehicle, and she was ordered to stop, and the closest person to her was my dad, and he ended up having to shoot this little girl because she was carrying a basket that they were worried had some kind of an explosive in it. And I know that ate at my father until the day he died in 2003. I know for a fact it did, because he only talked about it one time. And he was extremely intoxicated at the time that he told the story. And
wine pours out truth.
Yep. And it was just seeing the look. I had never up to that point, I had never once seen my father physically racked with pain. And this was at this point in time, he was, stage 4 cancer. So he was in pain 24 hours, physical pain 24 hours a day. But the emotional pain of recounting that story to those gathered was more than anything cancer could have ever done to him.
And that was how many years after it happened?
At least he was in theater 72. So that would have been probably at least 30 years, or right around 30 years.
So 30 years later, and it still is that painful for him to remember something that he did on behalf of this state.
Yep. All right. We're coming on time. We got a little philosophical there. One of the best Andrew rants we've had in a while.
Yeah, I have that tendency.
Sorry.
You know what we never did at the beginning of the show?
What's that?
We actually never did a public patch check.
No, I'll patch check on the quick. What do you got? You got I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it, but you got the veneer. I got the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah.
I was gonna
my Boogaloo shark.
I was gonna wear this one, but I decided not to. I figured that one would be a good one to wear out in public.
Yeah.
So on that note, this has been episode 95, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.
Later.